What questions have you got?
During the planning, are we aiming for 100% R or 80%?
Of what?
Of planning, so for example, in planning, we plan what, estimate the story and stuff, and how many, it's so part of the planning, like tasking, like a sub.
Yeah, so planning is split into two parts, two topics. The first topic is what. What is it the business wants, and why as well, which is a sprint goal. That's where you pull the work in. You base it on yesterday's weather. So if in the last sprint you pulled in 40 points, this sprint probably 40, unless something's changed. So you pull in, I don't know, 8 stories or 5.8. That's the first part. The second part is the what, and this is really up to the team. The product owner can be around, but it's for you as a team to self-organize. And this is where you task it out and apply time to it. And the reason you do it is not as a micromanagement. It's so that you have a measure, so you know every day when you inspect and adapt, are we progressing towards the goal? For a 2-week sprint, they would say typically it would be 4 hours for planning. So 2 hours in the what and 2 hours in the how.
So the data in there will not be used by the management for something?
No, absolutely not. That's really, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's not. The reason, I've got a YouTube on this, I won't cover it in great detail now. But the problem you've got in your burn down chart, which is a tool for you as a team to help self-organize to plan, you will say pull in 40 points, and you know you've got 10 days. But you know how stories go. I mean, in an ideal world, if we slice properly, the stories will look like that, yeah? So you know on day 5, you'll be able to go to the product owner, looking good, we're going to meet the sprint goal, looks like we're meeting all the stories. But in the real world, it usually looks like that, doesn't it? I mean, that's not good, we want to fix that. And that's the problem we were talking about right at the beginning. But the problem here is on day 3, we have no transparency. We don't know what's done and what's not done. So my personal preference is, as well as having the stories on a burn down chart, I would also have hours. So you've got your, and I've follow the YouTube, but you've got 40, which roughly translates to be about 300 hours worth of work. Now, if you've got a team of 6, and in a 2-week sprint it's 80 hours, 6 days, 480 hours. If you've got 480 hours here, you're going to fail because other things crop up. So I would, and this is why we don't want a timesheet you, and we don't want management seeing this. But what we do want to do is add up all your stories, and you may get to, for a team of 6, probably 250 hours, roughly. And then so you have 250 hours, and as you knock off these tasks, you should see the burn down chart do something like that. So at any time, you know how you're tracking. So the reason I use hours is as an aid for planning, because it gets you thinking. You think, oh shit, no, we forgot about this. But also, it's a sanity check. Is it really a 5? Because it's 50 hours. This 8 over here is only 40 hours. Do you really think it's... So you can do some rough guesstimating. I'm not saying points equals hours, but it can just cross-check in your mind. But the other thing is it helps you create this burnout chart. So at Freedom we do that, and I'll be honest, I did get quite a bit of pushback because a lot of developers felt that perhaps management were going to be there with the clipboards. It's not what it's for, it's to help you. Because then you know, and so you're not panicking at the end working till midnight, because you've already told the product owner, we've got to kill some of these stories, we can't do it. Here's the data. Empirical data trumps everything. Does that help? Any other questions? Let's go over it. What's in your mind?
In terms of coaching function for the KC,
yeah.
Yes, one is about the BU, but what sort of, or what areas of coaching?
Yeah, so the Scrum Master has 3 parts to their role. Now we get paid as KCs, but in this context, the role is Scrum Master. So David is a KC, his contract's changed, but when he's in the mobile team, he is the Scrum Master of the team. So that's the role. The role of the Scrum Master helps the team understand the values of Scrum, helps them self-organize, helps them builds all the team coaching kind of stuff that we know. The second part is they help the product owner build a backlog. They help the product owner be a servant leader to the team. I have to be honest, there's a handful of POs who are like project managers and push themselves upon the team. So it's up to the Scrum Master to pull the PO to one side and go, hey, at that daily scrum I saw you clamped to the whiteboard telling everyone what to do. That's not good. Leave the team to work it out for themselves. So that's the second part, is to help the PO understand the values of Scrum and help the PO interact well with the team and help the PO order the backlog. The third part of the KC is to help the organisation understand how best to work with the team. So Russ marching into a team saying, stop what you're doing, do this, it's more important, and 5 minutes later Nick saying, no, don't do that, this was wrong, do this. That's really bad. And so I'm not saying Russ and Nick do that, but in some organisations that does happen. So we need a KC who can go, hey, Russ, Nick, grab a coffee. You know what you just did there costs the team, because the team, you know how much a Scrum team costs anyone? A 2 week sprint? About $50,000. So that $50,000 thing you've got there, every time you go and disrupt it, costs. And we want to protect the team from disturbance for the rest of the organisation. So this is why KCs, and somebody asked why we call KCs, they should have the gravitas to be able to protect the team all the way up to the CEO. Because then we have the team, this is the engine room of the company. The engine room needs to be optimal, and we need people to protect the team from well-intended but dysfunctional behaviours that happens from people from around the organisation who don't understand the impacts of their patterns of behaviour. So the Scrum Master is there to coach the organisation, the product owner, but principally the parts of the team. That's really important. People don't get that. They get the first part of being a Scrum Master. They get that Scrum Masters book the meeting rooms, but all of this other stuff. And by the way, you're joining, I believe, the strongest team of Scrum Masters, at least in New Zealand, and one of the best in the world. And I'm not exaggerating, they are awesome. You've no idea how awful Scrum Mastery is in the planet. We're doing it really well here. And that's not just because of me, it's because we've had this practice for so long. Very few companies have dedicated Scrum Masters. And you know, they're not cheap. And you know, you get McKinsey coming in, they'll say, what, you've got 15 people who don't write code, and they get paid how much? And you know, it's a few mil if you add it all up with all the other costs and that kind of stuff. And the bean counters were hours out, right? So the fact that we're here, we make a huge difference. And if you look at a team of 6, if you add an extra person to that team of 6, you could increase the output of that team by, what, 16%? A high-performing Scrum Master can improve the outcome of a team by 500 to 900%. Multiply the outcome of a team by 900%. Part of that is being more efficient, part of that is being higher quality, maximising the work we don't do. You know, happy teams are healthy teams and all that kind of stuff. But Scrum Masters are hugely, hugely powerful. And we use them really well here. Was that a good spiel for the Scrum Masters? There you go. I do my job as a practice lead. My job here is done. Any other questions? What have you got, Luna?
So does the Scrum Master facilitate all these events?
Yes, they don't have to, they usually do. They have to just make sure they happen. So for example, with Daily Scrum, the Scrum Master doesn't need to be there. They just need to know that it happens. And in fact, a great Scrum Master will not turn up. Because if I don't turn up, does it still happen? If it only happens when I'm there, that indicates not a self-organising team. So a Scrum Master just needs to make sure it does happen. I would say the retrospective, the Scrum Master has to be there because it's their role to build the society of their team. The planning and review are pretty much owned by the product owner, but because the product owner is working on the content, it's good for the Scrum Master to focus on facilitating. Refinement, maybe the Scrum Master's there to help the team understand how to slice stories and all that kind of stuff. Maybe the BA facilitates, which is why we train BAs to be facilitators. Maybe the PO does. The Scrum Master doesn't need to be there. Most of the time, the Scrum Master is helping individuals, one-on-one coaching, which kind of overlaps a little bit with PEP, as you know, and the Scrum Master's across 2 teams. So it's good for the Scrum Master not to be there, because if the Scrum Master's always there, they become the answers man, or answers woman. Chris?
You already answered it based on the coaching for the KCs and the importance of it.
Thank you. Right, look at that, it's 25 to. One thing else to do is to talk about our questions. So I will and we'll go through these questions. We're doing well for time, we'll probably finish early. We're going to have to clean it up because we've got release planning coming up later. Let's see what the questions are. I'll ask who asked the question, and then we'll see if you're already happy with it. Why only delivery teams follow Scrum? Who asked this? Well, firstly, is that a true statement?
Maybe, I heard some teams don't follow something.
Well, okay, so the platform teams generally follow Kanban.
But not even
The
properly.
difference is Kanban uses width to limit. And the thing that, especially with like ops and SRE, because they're constantly changing, you can't plan the next 2 weeks ahead. So Kanban is more appropriate for those teams. I was actually thinking of the PE team. Now the fun thing there is they've got projects, so they're going to be using, I hope, Scrum for that. But then there's the ad hoc interrupt work. You know, somebody comes in and says, can I book leave or not? I know your job is far more valuable than that, so not to dismiss it. But we're going to try Scrum App, which is a blend of Kanban for the flow of work and Scrum for the project work. So that team's going to do Scrum App. Did you know? Yes, we talked about it, yeah. Why are we not using digital Scrum boards? What do you think?
Face to face.
Yeah. Many organisations think digital is great because we're a tech company. And we were, when I first joined here, we were tending towards digital boards, were a few physical. I know for a fact, because I know, I've studied the neurology of this, it feels so much better to have this. I mean, you could have emailed me this, right? But it feels so much better for me to hold this thing and have a physical artifact. I used to, when I first joined here, walk around 6 and 7, and you'd walk past a room, and you could tell that they were doing sprint planning. And the reason you could tell was there was a BA and a keyboard filling in user stories. And then 7 people, and I'm not exaggerating, once I saw a developer. It was in Auckland. I've got to do this because it was so funny. They were doing sprint planning. The BA was doing BA stuff. PO was checking his phone, as it happens. And other people, one person was like that, like zombies. The problem is with physical boards, with physical cards, what you do is you get people on the table and you go, right, we'll do this, we'll do that, what do you think about this? And our brains are wired to act and think around a campfire. You know, we go hunting together. And physical is something we work with. Virtual boards are not there yet. And so the collaboration, that keystone habit of collaboration is really important. And we only get it with physical. I had so much noise about that. Some developers just will not believe me, but it's true. Once you've done it properly once, you'll never go back. But thank you for asking, because that's an important question. Whose is this? How do we know Agile is better for us than Waterfall? Who asked this question? What do you think the answer is?
I guess it's heavily related on the meeting the goal. If we did actually meet the goal and achieve what the customers asked us to do.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is it depends. So sometimes it is legitimate to use standard practice, or use planning processes, or use sequential work. And it's to know your domain, to know your habitat, your command. So I wouldn't advocate just use Scrum every time, and if somebody ever does, they probably don't understand. But as it happens, most things benefit from doing a small bit and getting feedback, and trying a bit more, getting feedback. And doing big batch, big delivery, sequential work is often wasteful. Often, but not always. How do we know we have improved business performance from last year? So, we don't. This is a problem. It would be unethical to get 2 teams and do a full blind, double-blind study, statistically significant, the same project. One does it sequentially, one does it waterfall. If you look at pharmaceuticals, that's exactly what they do. They spend billions of dollars, and they have to do it for good reason. But in what we do, we don't use the scientific method to study a hypothesis. We use the theory-based method. And what we say is, based on what we know so far, this change predicts that we'll have this improvement. So, a culture change, maybe, here's one. Something, I don't know if you do this, you get in a lift and you might not say hello to the people in the lift. You may just check your phone because we don't speak, and some organisations that's not good. Now, it's scientifically predicted, if you get into the lift and say hello to everybody, makes them feel good, makes you feel good. They're going to go to their desk, a bit more oxytocin, they're going to say hello to somebody else. Everyone's going to be a little bit happier. Happier people are less defensive, which means they use their prefrontal cortex, which means they're slightly more intelligent. That means problems may get solved easier, and people trust each other more. Now, the science is quite clear on that. Can we do a study on that? It's hard.
So basically micro habits, is that what you're getting to?
Yeah, but the point I'm making is we know there is enough evidence to support that small batch sizes will help. But can we prove that the business is better this time next year because of small batch sizes? Of course not, because everything will be different now. We won't be doing wells anymore, we'll be doing something else. It'll be different people, other things will change. So we can't scientifically prove, that's what I'm getting with this, but we can predict based on the theory that it will probably help.
So basically it's a positive hypothesis we are forming based on the empirical evidence we get through the small batch sizes.
Yeah, and ultimately, if it smells like a duck and quacks, probably you'll know. But you won't be able to. You can't put it on a spreadsheet and tell Kevin, hey, look, of course Agile's better. There's no science to prove Agile is better. I mean, for example, Agile companies do outperform. The Standish Group show that projects in Agile tend to perform better than Waterfall. But that could just be because they have coaches in Agile and not in Waterfall. That could be the single reason. Waterfall may be better than Agile just with coaches. Who knows? But the theory suggests otherwise. Does that answer your question?
It's a work in progress.
It is. This is the thing, is we are uncovering ways of working. So what I think works today, maybe in the future, I'm proved wrong. I don't know.
It's a complex field, unknown.
Unknown unknowns, we'll never know, yeah. How stringent or flexible can the Agile methodology be? This was asked by Jenny, who's not here now. First thing sets me on fire. Agile is not a methodology. You know that. Because methodologies, like Kinevin, is in the simple domain. Do this, don't do that. And Agile isn't that, it's a mindset, it's a framework, it's a set of principles and practices. So I pulled her up on that. But how stringent or flexible? Now here's the funny thing. Scrum is a really lightweight framework. I mean, there's only 5 values, 3 roles for what all of those things. It's not much to it, right? The Scrum guide is only 16 pages long. But my suggestion is to follow it with rigor and discipline. And I have an industry-wide reputation of being a purist Scrum Master. Follow it hard. But then all of the other things, like physical boards, I can tell you I think what's best. Try it. Once you've got the stability and you've taken all of the complexity into the simple domain, if you know why you're breaking the rules and you know the consequences and the risks of breaking rules, break them. But on the other hand, don't break the rules, because that sounds sort of what's the word? Yeah. What we need to do is be very, follow the rules very stringently to begin with, until we adopt those micro habits, those keystone habits, then start relaxing the rules. And I think at Freedom, because we've been doing Scrum for 10 years, we're quite mature, but because we've had so many new people join us, I still think we're in a state of immaturity. So my advice is to try and stick to the Scrum rules as closely as you can. And you know that's my position, right? Does that help? Oh no, Jenny's not here, but I'm sure that helps. I spoke to her about that. How different is our Agile implementation from other standards from the rest, and why? Who's asked this question? What do you think?
I think is like you said, like pure, like closer to the theory.
Or effective. I mean,
Yeah.
it can be theoretical, but it's not about being Scrum. It's about delivering value to customers. So how good do you think we are compared to the rest of the industry in delivering value?
I think we're really good.
We are.
I mean, yeah, I've never seen a company that have dedicated Scrum Master for per team or shared Scrum Master per 2 teams, like expensive.
Yeah.
But I can see like in the long run, it's actually good.
It is. I think there's some things we're really good at and industry leading in. there's some things where we have a great opportunity to improve. I said that sensitively, didn't I? I think in the product space and the UX space, frankly, our quality into the market, we can do better. There's people who do better than us. But my assertion is if you get the basics right with the team and you get the discipline right and the right culture, we can fix all of those other things, is my belief. I think a lot of agile organizations are going through the motions. So you go there and there's post-it notes and burn down charts, but beneath the surface, there's a fear of failure. And I think, to be fair, at Freedom, there is an element of fear of failure, but in other places it's much, much worse. There's middle managers clinging on to power, not enabling people. And we can do better, but I think we are doing better than most. That's my opinion. But I do, obviously, I've been around most of the industry. Anyone else want to comment on that? I mean, what do you think compared to ASB, for example?
ASB were very early in the maturity and they didn't have coaches per learning on Scrum particularly.
No, but here's the
Kanban and PDCA.
Yeah, so the funny thing is ASB, I was there back in 2012, 2013, and I had a single high-performing Scrum team.
Yeah.
That woke ASB up. They were, wow, okay, we tried Scrum and it didn't work.
Yeah.
We proved to us it can't work. And ASB have gone through 7 agile transformations now.
Yes.
They've got McKinsey there at the moment. And I'm not a fan of McKinsey and the Big Four because they focus on cost, which is the opposite of what we want. But ASB, because of its size and because of that management layer, have gone through those cycles.
Yeah, they've got Deloitte there at the moment.
You're ex-Deloitte, aren't you, Zoe?
Yeah.
Right.
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan. And you know, Freedom used to be Deloitte, but the Big Four are using Agile as a land and expand. We can get into ASB if we saw them Agile, but they're not. It's not their life, if you know what I mean. They're a consultancy. It goes for PwC, IBM. They're all doing the same thing. And I was working with McKinsey at Westpac, and they're now at Spark. It's a disaster. It really is. And that's why at Freedom we said we'd change it from an agile practice to tactical delivery, because I want nothing to do with the agile industry. It's that bad. There you go. Soapbox, I'm off. Why product owners not coming to reviews? They asked that. We should encourage more product owners, more stakeholders to come to reviews. And one of the things we did to help was to have the sprint review at 1 o'clock. So it reduces that complexity of knowing where to be and when. It's just always in the same room. So we're still working on that. And if you can, I would encourage all of you to go to other people's sprint reviews to see what they're doing. How many meetings are too many? Who's this?
That was me.
What do you think?
Well, there's the 4 different sorts set out there. We have a hell of a lot more than that.
Yeah, we do. The events in Scrum, if you actually tally it up, it's about 12.5% of your time. Add up to 10% for refinements, that's 25%. Now the theory goes is then everything else is time for the team.
Yep.
But we know we have a lot of other stuff, you know, QBU here, we have all this stuff here and there, and then all these other meetings. I would encourage us to really radically challenge all of the meetings. I mean, company-wide town halls are useful, but there's lots of stuff as well.
Yep.
I agree. But when people say meetings, they obviously don't mean these, because these are not meetings, these are events.
Events, sorry. Yeah.
It's part of the work. It's a collaborative session where we're doing the work. It just happens to be we're in a meeting room.
Most of the meetings that I'm referring to are collaborative sessions, but we seem to have a truckload of them.
And have you been on my Agile facilitation training? You have?
Yes.
Yeah. That's why I truly believe in really stringent Agile facilitation or team facilitation, because if you can get in 30 minutes achieved what other people spend 2 hours talking about, that's a 25% thing, isn't it? How's the KCE different from the Scrum Master? We've covered that. Why are we mostly overestimating? What do you think?
It's over and underestimating.
Yeah.
Yes, so what happened is that first we have no any idea of what we're doing, so we plan based on what we have known. And then come next spring, we had the same issue, and then we estimate based on what we had in the past sprint. Apparently, it's a lot easier, so the next time we have this one, we based on the previous sprint, which is let's say 3. And then it blows up, becomes 5. So it's hard to.
Here's the problem. The first thing, so you know I told you about theory of constraints. The guy wrote that, Eli Goldratt, brilliant guy, genius. And he talked about this. He said, because he was a university professor, he was an Israeli, I think he was in Stanford. He said, you know, people would come and speak to me and say, Eli, can I have 5 minutes with you? Now, sometimes it'd be more than 5 minutes. Sometimes it'd be 20 minutes or an hour. It would never be less than 5 minutes. And the problem is, when we predict, it's got a long tail. Now, here's the other issue as well, and this is the old school project management way of thinking. So I used to be a PM, and I've got to plan the work, and I think it's going to be, well, I go and speak to the developer, and he goes, well, it's going to be 2 days worth of work. But I know if I say 2 days, he's going to be tapping me on the shoulder in 2 days. So I'm going to make it a week. So 8 plans a week. Now, I'm the project manager, I put it on my plan, and I go, well, he says a week, but I know he's always late, so I'm going to make it a week and a half. Then my boss comes to me, and we all pad it out, it's called buffering. Then what happens is the developer looks at my Gantt chart and says, oh, I don't need to start that for 2 weeks. And it's only 2 days worth of work, even though I've put it on a week. And then Murphy hits, Murphy's Law, and it takes a bit longer. So even though I said it's going to take 3 weeks, it takes 3 weeks and 2 days. See what happens? And the reason is this, the Gaussian curve here of estimation, things are unlikely to be shorter than we thought. They're likely to be longer. If you overestimate by far, people won't believe you, you'll have no credibility. So if you go say it's going to take 2 weeks and you suddenly do it in a day, people will say, well, why did you take 2 weeks? So even if you said it's going to be 2 weeks, you'll make it 2 weeks. And it's the student syndrome and Parkinson's law. But if you always estimate and you're wrong, so you always say it's going to be 5 days and it becomes 7 days, everyone will never believe you because you're always wrong and they buffer it. So you're in an impossible situation. Statistically, you want to be 80% off 2 sigma off the curve of the... Right, but then the world's a complex world and we just don't know. We want to just get rid of this. The point of the story points, so excuse the pun, is not for the management to know what you're doing. It's for you to be able to feel that it's about right and then to test against that on a daily basis. If you get it wrong, you know what? Doesn't matter. And we should feel safe that we thought it was a 3, but it became a 5. We want to try and push ourselves reasonably to give ourselves a slight sense of urgency, but not unsustainably. If you thought it could be a 5 or a 13, if you call it a 13, you'll become a 13 because you'll start doing cool stuff. So I would recommend being slightly aggressive and don't worry if you get it wrong. This requires a product owner to give you the safe space and to give you a purpose so you're driven, and it requires the business to trust you. Because we don't want to get back in, and we are getting back into this, I'll be honest, into this positional bargaining where the teams will go, no, it's a 20. The POs will say, well, you got 13. And the business will say, no, do it at 5. Because you'll end up taking 30 points and it'll be crappy quality. And then everyone's stressed, and then everyone's defensive, and no one trusts one another. So the points are not to be used as a stick. They're to use as a self-guidance to get a genuine good feel of what we think we can do. But if you think of it as sequentially, if you think of it as a Taylor list, you'll see it as we can do 40 points, therefore what 40 points can we ram in? And to be honest, in half an hour in this room, they're going to be doing release planning, and they're going to be playing Tetris to build stuff in. And that's the wrong way of thinking. It is what it is. Anyway, so Scrum versus Kanban, why are one over the other? Who asked this?
Me, covered it.
Covered it, thank you. 5 minutes to go. Where are we finding about other Agile stuff? Who asked this?
I did.
Cool. I will share with you lots of resources, books, YouTubes,
Yeah.
blogs, Twitter, Tinder. No. How far should Agile for Freedom go? Who asked this? What do you think?
I'm not too sure.
It's not about being Agile. In fact, we're beyond Agile. It's not how Agile or Scrum we are. It's are we delivering value to the customer that they're delighted with, that we make heaps of money, better than they thought, and better than the competition. Because it doesn't matter if we're the most Agile company in the world. If me and 2 mates set up a payments company down the road who eat your lunch, you're dead. So it's not about being Agile. Having said that, we know from the theory that doing agile techniques will help us achieve those aims. But I would suggest focus on the outcomes we're trying to achieve, high quality value to the customer sooner, and delighted teams and all of that good stuff. And this is just a platform to achieve that. You happy?
Yeah.
What value do user stories have?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think being able to focus on customer is a valuable item. It's just
Yeah. Who are we impacting for? And here's the funny thing about stories, because I also get pushed back on using physical cards. There was research done in the UK, because the National Health Service there, worth billions and billions, and they wanted to save some money, and they found that when you give somebody an appointment card to go to see the, the orthopedic surgeon, if you wrote the card down yourself, 10 a.m. on Tuesday, you were 25% more likely to, no, 18%, sorry, more likely to attend. So just writing the card yourself gives you the personal commitment. Giving somebody a card with 10 a.m. on Tuesday, people go yada yada and forget about it 20% of the time. The second thing is, remember, stories are a token for a conversation. We know the face-to-face conversation and shared understanding is more important than the artifact itself. Going back to Jira and the zombies, doesn't matter if you've got 1,000 acceptance criteria if no one's reading them. Having 5 acceptance criteria that we'll understand on a physical card, and we can say, look, we've done this now, is really, really powerful. I cannot emphasize enough that the most high-performing teams have physical cards throughout the world, and all the thought leaders push it. Then all of the tech companies say, but we're a tech company, we should use tech. Don't. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Why product owners not for who have done that one, done.